Good morning, everybody. So if you came in late, just hopefully you're sitting with your teammates or group members, because I'll have you do some brainstorming and then you're going to kind of talk to one another about that. So just be near them. So yeah, I'm one of our librarians here. Hopefully you have all visited our library at some point. I'm the liaison for engineering as well as for chemistry, math and statistics, and women and gender studies. So that means that I do workshops for those departments. I buy books for those areas. And I also teach our information literacy and hello. So anyway, I love talking about patent searching. How many of you know what a patent is? Anyone? Yeah, we got a couple hands go up tentatively. Anyone want to venture a definition of what is a patent? No, that's okay. We're going to talk about that. So yeah, let's move right into that. So first, thinking about why are we searching for patents? One, our main reason is to learn how something works. Patents include detailed drawings and descriptions. And I know that some of you, like I took a brief glance at the topics that you're working on. And so some of you have kind of complex systems, and it might not be that there's one patent that covers every aspect of the project that you're working on, but there might be a bunch of patents that cover different aspects of it. So when you get to doing brainstorming, thinking about all the different components and what ones you might need more ideas from. Patents, most of the information contained in patent filings is not available anywhere else. So what that means is that we have all these wonderful subscription databases in the library. You've got the entire internet for searching, but the content of those patents may not be duplicated anywhere else. I think the statistics I read was like 85% of the material found in patent filings is not available anywhere else. So it's this giant, rich source of information, especially for you future engineers to use. Another reason I want you to be aware of patent information is because this career field that you are in, many of you may be going out and inventing things in the future, either on behalf of a company, or maybe you're going to be an entrepreneur and do your own in patents, and that you'll want to be aware that this is going to protect your idea and allow you to profit off of it. Also, when you get out into the job market, would be really advantageous for you to do some searching and find out what patents have been issued by the people who are going to be interviewing you, the companies you might want to work for, or if you're going to go to graduate school, what is that university getting patents for? What are the people who might be your advisors or the people interviewing you? What patents are they working on that might help you have an insight if this is a good fit for you? Okay, so our fundamental question, what is a patent? It's a patent for an invention is the grant of a property right. So it's this legal right to the inventor issued by our federal government, the United States Patent and Trademark Office. The right conferred by the patent grant is in the language of the statute, the right to exclude others from making, using, offering for sale, or selling the invention in the US, or importing the invention into the US, usually for a set amount of time. I think it's about 20 years. You might have the ability to renew it. So historically, patents have been granted since 1790. Our country really values innovation. And so in exchange for encouraging inventors to share how a product works, the government is saying, if you make how you've created this thing available to everyone, you are the only one who can sell it for the next certain number of years. So it's pretty important to our country to encourage, and there are other kinds of intellectual property laws that encourage innovation in other ways, and certainly lots of there's always some kind of disputes over property and intellectual property laws, but I think it's pretty interesting, and it really is something that will impact your future as engineers. There's three types of patents, and the one that we're primarily going to focus on today are utility patents. So that can be granted to anyone who invents or discovers any new and useful process, machine, article of manufacture, or composition of matter, or any new and useful improvement on one of those things. So thinking about the project that you are working on, Where does it fall into that as a new process, machine, article of manufacture, or composition of matter? There are also design patents, and that's basically a patent on the way a thing looks. So it could be the way your iPhone looks, not the way your iPhone works, the internal parts of it, but the design of what an iPhone looks like. So that's going to be, the design patent is going to protect that.
Like the notch, is the notch patented?
It very well could be, that there's. I think even like our Nike, like the symbol, like or all of that. Well, the symbol is also going to be trademarked, but the way the shoe looks, that is going to be part of the design. We could, they're really fun. We could look up some of those more famous design patents if we wanted. And then there's also plant patents. So unless any of you are also biology majors, we're not going to be going into that. But just be aware that in biology we can be patenting our new reproduction of distinct varieties of plants. So, like I mentioned, the first patent was issued in 1790. It was for potash, and it was a type of fertilizer signed by George Washington. Back in the day, there were like 4 patent examiners who were just reading all of these and granting them. Now there are thousands of federal patent examiners, and I like to just point out that this might be a career path for you. Having technical information would make you a really good patent examiner, especially if you're someone with an interest in the law. So if you decide to go on and further your career, you might say, oh, I'd like to be the person who is reading all of these technical documents and helping determine which meet the criteria to be issued a patent. So, let's move ahead. So what are the criteria to be granted a utility patent? There's 3. The first one is meaning is novel. It means it cannot be known or in use in printed publication anywhere in the world prior to the invention. And why this is so important, and I would say to any of you who think you might invent something someday, the most important thing you can do is not tell anyone about your invention. Don't write about it. Don't email somebody with details about it, because if that information gets out and gets published on the web, then it's considered, it's out there, it's prior art, it exists in the world, and patent examiners, they spend their time looking to see, has this idea already been written about somewhere else? If it has, then you're not eligible to receive a patent. So secrecy, really important when you are trying to get a patent. Keep that under your hat. It also must be useful. So your application or utility must be an improvement over existing products or techniques. So you can't just change one little widget and be like, it's different. Yeah, so maybe it's novel, but it's not useful if that little change wasn't an improvement over the existing method. And then non-obvious. So it can't be something that someone like me with just ordinary ability could have thought of as an improvement on it. So it has to be something that skilled people have come up with to make that change. So we're going to go through some of these steps in patent searching. If you were actually applying for a patent, you would spend dozens or maybe even hundreds of hours doing patent searching. For the purpose of this class, we're not going to spend hundreds of hours doing research, but I do want you to understand that it can be you should take it as a very rigorous process. It's important, especially if you were wanted to file a patent, you would want to take copious notes on all the different searching techniques you used. You can certainly hire patent attorneys to do this stuff for you if you wanted to get your own invention patented. But we can reap the benefits of all of this very rich database ourselves. We're going to talk about So the steps that we're going to go through is we're going to use that worksheet in a couple minutes to describe our invention, use those keywords to find the initial class and subclass that would relate to our topic, determine the relevancy, retrieve some patents, and then review them to see, look for information that would be relevant to us. So to start off, I want to do a little activity. I'm going to pass this object around. You should have a little quarter sheet, and on one side it should say write down as many words as you can think of to describe this object. What does it look like? What is it made of? What is it used for? So this is just getting us warmed up, doing some brainstorming activity. So if you know what this is already, and you can start answering those questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to have you pass this around so everyone can get a chance to look at it, and then actually write down some words on this piece of paper because we're going to talk about them in a little bit. So just take a few minutes, and here is a picture. So if you're already familiar with this, you can use what that picture is, but it'll come around to you so you get a chance to touch it and examine it and write down a little bit of what you think it is, what's it made of, and any words you can use to describe it. So this is going to be an important part of our searching, is being able to describe what kind of information we are looking for. So I'll give you a couple minutes. So the reason that I'm going to kind of spend time focusing on this and have you spend a lot of time coming up with search terms is because we don't want to rely just on keyword searching alone when we're searching for patents. And there's several reasons. One is that patents aren't written in like everyday, common language, the way we all talk. One, they've been around since 1790, so some of them just use obsolete words that we don't use anymore. But more importantly, our current ones, the ones that are probably going to be most relevant to the projects you're working on, are written both in kind of a technical engineering jargon and in legal language. So that can be hard for us if we're not familiar with that language to search. Our terminology could be vague or inconsistent. So, here's an example where just the spelling, we don't know. Do people spell it with the color with a U because they're British, or Y from their tire? Or the words are obsolete or, irrelevant. How many of you know, if I say, I want you to go buy an LP, what's an LP? If I said, I have this awesome new hi-fi at my house. It's not Wi-Fi. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, so an LP, that was a way of saying a record album, a long-playing record album. A hi-fi was like our super fancy 1950s like turntable sound system. So those are things that people don't say anymore, but they might have shown up, they might have been used in the patent application because it was just the way they described things back then. And then the other reason is because words have different meanings in different fields. So, we could be in biology and talking about a mouse and it's a rodent, or we could be, in here talking about this thing. So we have, the words could be not precise. So I'm going to now show us the patent. Let's see if this will open up for me today, or this right now. We just were looking at it before. I'm going to copy it over. Okay, so hopefully you all wrote down a few words to describe this item, and I'm going to show us the patent now. Okay, so this item, the patent title of this patent is Generally Spherical Object with Floppy Filaments to Promote Sure Capture. Did anyone write down any of these words? Raise your hand. Someday somebody's going to do it, and I'm going to have to give you like $100. But never have I had anyone come up with those words, because those are not the words I would have come up with describing this. So what are some words that you did come up with when you were describing this? Don't be shy. Yeah.
Like stretchy.
Stretchy, yes. What else? What else did we describe with this thing? Red, yep, with the colors, red and blue. What else? Rubbery. Yep, rubbery. Anybody write ball? Anybody write toy? What about stringy? Yeah, so there's lots of different ways we could describe this and have a pretty, if we describe this as a red and blue stringy ball, I think in our mind's eye, most of us might have envisioned what this thing looks like. None of us probably would be thinking of generally spherical object with floppy filaments to promote sure capture. So So this is an example of why patents written in both that technical and legal jargon can be challenging to search. So I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint, and we'll come back and talk more about these in a second. All right, so what we're going to do instead is think about using classification searching. So the cooperative patent classification is the result of a partnership between the European Patent Office and our US Patent Office in their joint effort to develop a common internationally compatible classification system for technical documents, in particular patent publications. When I say classification system, and here I know it's really hard to see, there's a little layout of what it is. What do you think of? What other classification systems are you familiar with? Here's a little example of how this works. It's a hierarchy. There's a section that's letters A through H and Y. There's a class. There's a subclass. There's a group. Does this sound familiar to anything in the natural sciences that you're familiar with? Like taxonomy and biology. What about, if any of you have taken information literacy, we use the Library of Congress classification system. It's very similar, where there's going to be we're using letters that help us differentiate different subjects, and then we're using numbers to divide those down. So that's what our classification system that we're going to try searching today is. And so you're going to, in a little bit, I'll have you use this worksheet. And like we just did brainstorming about this toy, I'm going to have you spend some time thinking about the object or process that your group is working on. And so some of you have, a process that maybe has multiple different facets to it. That is fine. Think about all of them in as many ways as you can to describe them. So, what does it do? Thinking of your invention, what's your end result? If it's a physical thing, what's it made of? What's it used for? And then just go from there, doing as much brainstorming, thinking about, are there synonyms? If you can't think of any off the top of your head, that's fine. Pull up your thesaurus online and use that to help you think of other terms that other people might be using to describe a similar thing. So we'll come back to this. And then we're going to do all of that, come up with some keywords, and then before you leave today, I hope that you're going to be able to fill out some classifications that apply to the object or process that your group is working on. Here is an example. I think I'll pull it up in Google Patents in just a minute instead because it is kind of hard to see here. We are going to just work on searching Google Patents, and I did put that URL down on the bottom of that little slip of paper you were just working on. Be aware that if you were going to apply for a patent, you would definitely want to search the federal government's patent website as well. And there actually are other ways to do patent searching. But our Google patent, it's about a month behind. So for our purposes, I think it's current enough. Another thing is they have gone back and scanned patents from 1920 through 1976. So it's nice. You're going to get a lot of historical documents in there as well. So that's what we're going to work on today. Here's a little bit of a breakdown of the anatomy of at least of a current patent. The older ones didn't have quite as many features. This is an example. I don't know if any of you watch Mythbusters. I love that show. My kid loves that show. So this is a patent issued to Jamie Heineman from the show. It's a remote control device with gyroscopic stabilization and directional control. That's the name of the patent. He is listed here as the inventor. One thing that's kind of nice is if you're searching by inventor name, it will tell you the city and state the person lives in, or at least at the time of when the patent was issued, so it can help you narrow down. And that also means that you're able to search by city and state. That's something I had talked about earlier, that if you're going to maybe do some job hunting and try to identify who's hiring people who invent things that I like working on, you might try doing that to come up with the names of that. In this case, there isn't an assignee listed. The assignee is would be usually the name of a company, although occasionally it might be the name of another person. But it's basically the person who has the right to sell the invention. In this case, because there's only the inventor listed, he's both. He's the inventor and the assignee. But if you all got jobs at, John Deere, part of your contract when they hire you will say, unless you have some like amazing negotiation skills, but most of you, when you get a job, they're going to say part of the contract is that anything you invent on the job, as you know, that you're paid to work on, the company becomes the assignee. Your name would be listed here, you and all the teammates who worked on creating the invention. You would get credit here as the inventor, but the company would be the one who has the ability to sell and profit from the invention. So that's what assignee is, and that is something that's useful for you to search, especially when you go out on the job market, is to see what kind of patents are being granted to particular companies. The other thing, we were just talking about classification, so we're going to look for that. That's a number that starts with a letter, so here it is. Here's our class number. There'll be a description. Here's our abstract. So for those of you that have taken information literacy or familiar with looking at scholarly journal articles, it's the same idea. It's a brief description of the patent. A patent is generally very long, dozens, maybe even for our technology, our computer processing ones, they could be hundreds of pages long because there's so much description of all the components of it. So reading the abstract is going to help you figure out, does this relate to what I'm working on today? And then you go down and look into, they'll provide background information. They'll obviously have all sorts of drawings. And at the end, and I'll point this out later when we look at some, there'll be references. So just like you have in your scholarly journal articles, at the end of your article you have references. Your patents have references at the end that will tell you, they're basically, when they're writing this, saying, here's how I'm different from this existing patent. You could look at those, especially if you say, oh, this is exactly what I'm interested in. Look at those other older patents to get more information. They might talk about using different techniques or different materials, and that could be beneficial to you as well. And then the claims, the legal aspect. So for those of you, if you ever were applying for a patent, the claims part is that defines the inventions and what aspects are legally enforceable. So that part, from a legal standpoint, is important. I did mention searching for patents by different people. I just thought I'd pull up, here's an example of one. Searched for your professor, Jody Prosai. She has a patent from a few years back. So yeah, you'd want to search for, you can search by location, you can search by a future employer, a future graduate school, and give you more information. So there's lots of ways outside of this class that you may want to do some patent searching. So right now, I'm going to go over to, that website, and you can come along if you like. It's this URL at the bottom of that little quarter sheet I gave you, patents.google.com. And I'm going to just go to the home page right now. So this is what it looks like to begin with. I'm going to just do a super simple search. I'm going to just search for shovel, because as I was shoveling my front yard this morning, I was thinking about how some shovels are a lot better than other shovels. And so it tells me they came up with 500,000 some results that have this word in it. That's a lot. Even if we all agreed to spend our whole day looking through this list, we could not get through all the 500,000 results. So we want to narrow it down. That's where using that classification search is going to be helpful. But right now it is sorted by relevance, so that's good. You might start going through just some of the first ones that come up to see in terms of how relevant they are. I like this first one here. I think is the one that is my favorite kind of shovel. Yeah, I don't know. Someday you're going to grow up and be old like me, and you're going to have things like favorite shovels. And this is my favorite kind of shovel that has this bent handle. So when you have to go out and buy yourself a shovel someday, buy the kind with the bent handle. It'll save your back. Anyway, this, so this one I say, oh, this is useful. I like this. I'm going to go down and look for the classification. So this tells me it's in E01H502 hand implements. That is like our subject headings that we might use for library classification, like your hashtags you might use on Instagram to find your favorite subject. That's hashtag cutest puppies, whatever. Here's our classification that we're going to look at today, hand implements. And I will, actually, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this one just so you can see. this patent, so it has citations to all these other patents. So this could be, if I said, oh, this is really useful, I want to take a look at these. These are all the ones that they cited, and here, 27 newer, it's cited by 27 newer patents more recently have cited this one. So I would want to take a look at all of those to see relevant information. But what I also want to do is take note of my classification. So on your worksheet over here, it's encouraging you to take note of your classifications. This would be one I would write down, this E01H502. I'm going to just click on it. So now it's narrowed down. We had 500,000 results that had shovel in it. Now I'm down to 918. We could easily get through 918 if we split them up between all of us in the rest of this class period, no problem. So that is a manageable, in my opinion, manageable number. So you could start going through that systematically, figuring out which one is most relevant to you. So, and you can see there are other ways that you can do some searching. You can narrow by time, period. But I would say maybe focus on, right now, I'll have us take up your worksheet, spend some time brainstorming as many words as you can to help you describe your idea. And this, I would say spend individually first, spend time individually doing this description. Then you can talk after that, after you've all got some ideas down, then you could talk to your teammates about it. But I think if you start talking first, you'll probably have fewer results. So in terms of getting as many ideas out there, it's better for you each to spend a few minutes individually coming up with some ideas of how you envision this, especially I don't know how much time you have all spent discussing your project. So get as many ideas down here, and then we're going to go in and start searching. And then we're going to look and see, which classifications we can identify that might be useful, and then figure out how to go through that. And some of you might have things that are still very, very large, and you might collectively as a group figure out how you're going to manage going through that. As you could see, these patents are PDFs. So I would encourage you, to save them somewhere, create a folder just for your patent searching for this class, and then figure out how you're going to share them with your partners that you're working with as you communicate those ideas. Before we get into that, does anybody have any questions now? Okay, so then, spend some time getting some ideas down on this worksheet, describing your invention, what's it made of, what's it used for, and then we can get in and start searching, and I'm going to come around and I'll talk with each of your groups on it. And some of you I know have things that aren't necessarily an object, it's more of a process. If your process is something that does have several components, and maybe some of them are a physical item, think about describing that. That's probably where you're going to see more of the patent material. But then we can also talk about doing literature searching for other supporting materials. You may find that there's academic studies on a process or technique that would be relevant to your whatever assignment your group is working on. All right, well, if there's no questions, I will say